Los Angeles, I'm and most Hollywood night. She goes to California, oh, California.
What you say about Los Angeles?
LA got the people saying,
You're listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Welcome to Corner of the Galaxy, the show that talks 100% LA Galaxy soccer. We're glad you could join us. Now it's time to sit back and relax as your hosts navigate through the twisting, turning, but never boring world of your six-time MLS Cup champion, LA Galaxy.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com, coming to you on a Thursday, January 9th. Los Angeles is on fire. I don't know what else to tell you. We're going to try and get you through some Galaxy talk tonight, but really, let's be honest, I'm just here to check in on you guys, make sure everybody's okay. We got some stuff we can talk about in regards to the LA Galaxy's roster building, the rumor updates, all that sort of, little menial stuff that we have to talk about, but I don't want to get it too in-depth. There's bigger things in mind here. We want to make sure that everybody's good. So check in with me in the chat room, make sure you're okay. If you're listening on the podcast, hopefully this provides you a little bit of relief from the craziness that is going on around you. To help me do all that, we're glad to have them. If it was fires in Los Angeles, the only thing that we could counter that with is snow in Texas. It's Eric, the Portuguese Hammer Vieira. Eric, how's it going, bud?
It's going all right. Again, I'm with you. Bigger fish to fry in the world, and just with everything going on, my heart goes out to anyone who's having trouble right now and evacuations and dealing with worrying about, what's happening next. So heart goes out to you. I myself, I'm on the opposite. LA is on fire. North Texas, I got several inches of snow today. Had a snow day, had the day off. So blessing in disguise, kind of got to enjoy the snow and have that. But you almost have that guilt that goes along with it, because here I am enjoying myself in the snow. And then, Los Angeles, or, my hometown's on fire. And so, it's that mixed bag of how you're feeling. I did to bring some humor to it.
Yes.
I did see LA is on fire. Dallas is under snow. I think we got like 20 years left, and then we're checking out.
That's it
from this planet. Yeah. So, just, we'll figure it out.
That's 100%. And the new digs back there too. I mean, you're looking nice and sharp. You look comfy and cozy. Quite honestly, it looks like it might have snowed outside, because you do look a little like, hey, it snowed outside.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So I'm still figuring out. We'll see how the audio is and the camera angles as a office space. The new digs. I love it.
Okay.
Looks great. You can see, our little built-in that we have here.
Right.
As a podcast studio, still figuring it out. So
I think you need to get some.
This is preseason.
You need to get some like cloud. You know how they have the cloud? Have you seen the clouds like that can sort of dampen some of the reverberation?
Okay.
Like you can kind of put it up above you, so that way there's a little ceiling and a shell above you. It absorbs a little bit.
I'm gonna have to dig into. I've already done microphones and things like that.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to get into sound dampening, lighting. I'm gonna have to go full Guessman on this. So
100%. This is how you go down this twisting road, and we'll hold it. Tell me.
Next thing you know, I'll be riding trains. Yeah.
Yeah. One is fine. By the way, somebody asked me how the trains are. The trains are fine. Don't worry about the trains. They're doing just fine. OC is relatively, knock on wood, untouched. The airplanes were landing back in the normal direction today, which means that there is the onshore flow once again. Humidity should be rising a little bit, at least here in the OC. But I did hear that there were some winds that we're supposed to pick up over the evening and possibly into tomorrow that are still going to cause some problems for people. So be safe, be careful out there. As I've talked to Galaxy fans across the basin here, you sort of get a sense of what's going on. I know a bunch of people who've evacuated. I'm sure there's people in our chat room that have had to evacuate. I know there's at least one Galaxy fan that I know of that completely lost everything. And we'll talk about Steve here in a little bit. Steve Cerrillo, different Steve, is up in Pasadena and Steve was evacuating and moving around. Sarah, who's one of our good listeners, is right there in sort of that evacuation zone up in Pasadena, Altadena. There was a side note that I did not realize about Altadena. And it was one of those, I follow a lot of Disney accounts and stuff like that, but apparently back in the day, a lot of Imagineers and a lot of people who worked at the theme parks and the higher up, especially at Disneyland, sort of made it up to an affordable place in Altadena, right? It was sort of this enclave. Well, then like more people kept moving, and so it's really this Imagineer enclave. Well, Joe Rhodes, who was one of the top Disney Imagineers, that type of thing, was saying that
I know Rhodey, right?
Yeah,
the earring guy.
Yeah, you got it. That's the dude, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he basically was saying that there were a lot of people who were up there. There are a lot of people who lost their houses who were former Imagineers and that type of thing, and that means that there's a lot of stuff that they had and memorabilia that is now no longer. And so that's crazy. You look at just sort of Pasadena in terms of Pacific Palisades and Pasadena both have these sort of exterior Hollywood, right? Like, so you're like, hey, I work in Hollywood, I do things, and these are the places I go to live. They're on, like, a little bit different of the extremes whenever you talk about Pacific Palisades, but very much a Hollywood enclave. And then up in Altadena and Pasadena and that type of thing, again, sort of outside of Hollywood, but people who work in the industry, people around. So I just feel like everybody's connected in this, and you look at that. So again, my only advice, and it's really crappy advice at this particular point, is to heed those evacuation warnings. Pack up before you have to leave, because if you have to go, you're going to want to get out of there. The stuff and all of the destruction that we've seen looks like a blowtorch got taken to some of these places, and they're just not there anymore, and you don't want to be in the way of that. So please be safe. I'd much rather be worried about how you rebuild than worry about how we have to bury people, and that's not where we want to be. So let's keep that. Let's try to preserve life, and we will rebuild. We will be back. All that stuff. All right. So
yeah, that's the toughest part when you see these things happening is. You tell yourself in your mind logically, it's just stuff, get out, be safe. But then when you think about, you see the photo albums that people are going for and like you said, memorabilia and heirlooms and things like that. Yeah, it's just stuff. But at the same time, what that means to people, that's where your heart goes out to everyone there. I have, my cousin in Sierra Madre, that area there, she's staying with my parents. She had to be evacuated. So just, definitely goes out to all those people. Cause you're right. Your life's the most important thing. You can rebuild, you can make new memories, you can figure stuff out, but that doesn't make it less devastating or not devastating. Still hurts, still painful.
Greg Vanney was talking today. So there was MLS Media Day, and we can sort of tie this in. Greg and Edwin Cerrillo were the two LA Galaxy representatives at Media Day, which suddenly I don't know, Eric, maybe I'm crazy, but it seems like it shifted East Coast and it's in Miami, and I just can't figure out why they would hold it.
Why would they do it in Miami?
Why would they?
Is there something happening in Miami?
By the way, you want to talk about the biggest bunch of BS? They hold it in Miami. Does Lionel Messi show up? No.
Of course he doesn't.
Why would that guy show up, right? The whole deal. The amount of, and let's be very clear, the amount of leeway that MLS gives Lionel Messi in terms of his media availability is like Carlos Vela times 7, right? And obviously we've heard about Carlos Vela and his house burning down. I don't want to pick on him, but they give a lot of leeway to Lionel Messi, and they don't make him talk, and like there's no repercussions for him not talking and anything like that. And yet they move media data to freaking Miami. There used to be one in Los Angeles. Usually there was an East Coast one in New York, that type of thing. Like you could sort of understand that. But let's move it to Miami, and then let's not care about like who talks or whatever.
Might as well be in Buenos Aires. Why don't they do it from his living room? I think that even then, I don't know if he'll show up for that. It's gross. And I don't want to sound like too much of a hater, obviously, with GOAT debates and with my, Portuguese heritage, that always gets tinted into it. But it is kind of gross in the way that, the league is catered and built around him. And to a certain point, he's earned it. He's deserved it. He's, arguably the best player in the world, best player ever. Right. And so, okay.
Did you just say that as a Cristiano Ronaldo fan? I just want to make sure. Arguably. But who's arguing?
We can argue.
No.
But to the point of you brought him in to grow the league, to grow the sport, and to put MLS on the map. And when he's not having those conversations, what it's media day. What does he have other stuff going on? Or, there's really no excuse not to be forward. I understand if he's injured. I understand if there's other obligations, international breaks. Of course, you give leeway on those. But he really should be your face. He is the face of the league. He should be the talking face, and the language barrier shouldn't be an issue. There's plenty of Spanish media that cover it and that can translate and figure it all out. So that's the part that just makes you feel gross for what it's worth. And to tint it Galaxy way, because we're homers and the way it is. When David Beckham came here,
I was going to say
he wore it. He wore it, and people hated him for it, and he was disliked. But he was the face, and he went out there and he spoke, and he made sure that he was making connections across other stadiums. When you'd visit, he'd make himself accessible. So you can paint the David Beckham picture in a negative light if you want to, but I don't think that's to any fault of his. I think he did his job in terms of growing the league and putting, moving MLS 2.0 in another direction.
The fact that he had the investment opportunities that he did, maybe he saw that as an investment in the future. Yeah. Maybe Messi doesn't see that, right? Maybe he doesn't have that same thing. But anyway, they had media day. Greg Vanney was talking. Greg Vanney opened because somebody asked immediately about the fires and everything that was going on in LA. And he said, it was devastating. Greg recounted a story of leaving LAX and taking off out of LAX and like coming through this blanket of smoke and then seeing the destruction and the flames on the hillside and everything. I mean, if you've flown out of LAX, if you sit on that right side of the plane, as soon as you get up there, you're looking at Pacific Palisades, you're looking at Malibu, you're like right there as that piece of Southern California juts out into the ocean, right? And so you have and we saw, I'm sure you've seen the pictures that people were taking as they were approaching into the
terrific,
totally just nuts of everything that you can see. And so Greg was talking about that. Greg did mention that a former LA Galaxy player lost their house. I don't know who it is. I've actually asked. I don't think that they wanted to make that public and the whole deal. Yeah. I have some guesses, but I'm not going to give you my guesses in all that. But bottom line is, if it's somebody who needs our help, the LA Galaxy will certainly let us know. I know that the Galaxy behind the scenes are working with the LA Galaxy Foundation right now to try and figure out some ways so that way they could be helpful. So I would look for that hopefully here in the next week or so as they sort of gather that up. I know that seems like a long time, but I'm sure they want to do something that's worth it. It could come out tomorrow. I'm just saying, don't put a time frame on it. Let them work on it a little bit, but there's stuff that I think you'll be asked to do or asked to participate in if you want to from the LA Galaxy side of things. The Galaxy put out a little note today, and it says, "Our hearts ache for our city. All those in Southern California affected by wildfires. We are grateful to the first responders and many people working to protect our community." That was from the LA Galaxy. We know that most teams have put out those. We know that the NFL has moved the game that was going to be played at SoFi now between the Rams and who else was it?
And the Vikings.
The Vikings.
And it's going to be played in Arizona, which is, it is what it is. You have to figure it out, but it's just another, unfortunate set of circumstances.
Mm-hmm. 100%. So they'll be off in Arizona and that sort of the thing. I don't know. The Lakers canceled the game. The Kings have canceled the game, right? So Kings, by the way, playing the Flames. Always nice to have the tie-in with current events around. But no, so there's a lot of things happening in Los Angeles right now that basically are gonna screw things up for a little while in terms of the sporting view and how everything sort of takes off. And that's life, and everybody will sort of survive that part and move on. The sports. Every once in a while, I was telling you before we started, it kind of feels like COVID in a way. It just sort of puts things in perspective. You're like, there are bigger things out there than sports.
And one thing that we did learn is we will figure it out. That's a motto. Shout out to my dad. He likes to kind of make fun of me. He says, "You always say that," and it's because we will figure it out. We'll figure out what to do. We don't have the answers now. Stuff goes sideways every once in a while, and then you just have to figure out along the way. So, of course, cancel those games as a precaution. Do what you need to do and pause. And I think we've learned one of the lessons that we can take from COVID times is that we can pause and figure it all out later, and everything will be okay in the long run, in the end, as long as we're healthy at the end of it.
Yeah, by the way, Eric in the chat room has the most relevant particular question for you right now. How are you handling the snow? Like, what is a snow day? I would like to understand how this snow day works.
This is something that I have learned since moving to North Texas, which I actually, at the time that I moved out in 2021, they had the big Texas freeze. So there was the big Texas freeze out, and it was a crazy event knocking power out. And so I actually ended up moving a couple weeks after that. But what was told to us when we were moving, that was a once in a century, every 100 years, there's a snowstorm like that and a freeze. That doesn't happen often. That's an anomaly that happened. Well, I'm on my third snowstorm since I've been here. Every year it seems like it snows and it ices. And so basically what's happening, and this is new coming from Southern California, is winter storm comes through. You get a wintry mix, or you get snowfall, and then you get several inches of snow. And much like people make fun of Southern California when it rains, the truth is the infrastructure isn't built for rain. So when you get a decent amount of rain, people forget how to drive because the water doesn't flow properly because it's, the streets aren't designed to, get rid of that water so quickly. Same thing with North Texas and the snow, because snow happens so infrequently. People make fun. Oh, come on. In Minnesota, people drive through, several inches of snow every day and nothing gets canceled. Well, this area isn't built to handle a lot of snow. So when we get, 4 or 5 inches, I think there was 8 inches of snow that was projected throughout the day, you're going to shut school down. So we had a snow day today. We're going to, not have people driving on the roads for the most part. Of course, you could still get there, but you just want to avoid sliding around and icing, especially with student drivers and things that happen. You don't want to put anyone at risk. So we just bunker down. We got our bread, we got our eggs, we got our beverages. So, no one is happier than my kids right now. They get to be on the devices. My son right now is on a call with his buddies playing Fortnite, living the life. When would that happen on a regular Thursday night? So, so we're fine. We're safe. We're hunkered in, and I'm sure by the weekend it'll be cleared up. So handling it just fine. No major issues. Power's still working. Internet's still working. We have food, so everything is all good.
A couple quotes that came out of Media Day that I want to get to, or at least one that I thought was interesting from Greg Vanney, just talking a lot about putting the roster together and how much one of the things Greg Vanney said was basically, I don't think that we've even scraped the surface yet in terms of what we're able to do and the adjustments we're able to do and the flexibility that we have, which is fun to say if you're Greg Vanney. However, Eric, I do take a look here, and there's 23 players on the roster right now, and there's some holes and a whole bunch of other stuff. So I know Greg Vanney isn't panicking. I know that Will Kuntz isn't panicking, but at the same time, you look at it and you say, well, I'm glad you have flexibility in what you want to do tactically. I'd just like to know who's actually going to play for the team, because no Maya Yoshida right now, so like you're sort of waiting on that to sort of come through. I do, again, I will reiterate, I think he will play again this year. So I think you're going to get Maya Yoshida in there. There's been the rumors about Lucas Sanabria. We told you how much that is. I still expect that to get done. That actually seems like, from all of the little rumor nuggets that are dropping here and around, that's getting closer and closer to being signed. So Lucas Sanabria is one that seems like he's joining. We have the Zonko rumor as well for the center back. So I mean, there's things there, but there's still some stuff and some big question marks in it. But Andy Dioso was at, I believe he might have been in Miami, lucky guy him, and he said, Greg Vanney at MLS, and putting one trophy into the cabinet, this is the quote, putting one trophy into the cabinet is a good start, but it's now about being able to replicate that and do more. Edwin Cerrillo was also sort of talking about it and saying, hey, we feel like we have a seventh, cup in us next. That's what's next. And you like it. By the way, I think you should enjoy it whenever they announce the LA Galaxy. It is the MLS Cup defending champion LA Galaxy, which is always a nice little flair to have. So whenever Greg Vanney walked up there, he got to strut his stuff up there. He didn't, by the way, but he could have, right? He was like, let me hear it. Yeah, he was like, let me hear it. What was that? One more time. That's what he should have done. He didn't. Yep. He's a much nicer person who has an ego much smaller than my own. But he was, I imagine that you have to enjoy that. I imagine that Will Kuntz and Tom Braun and everybody loves to hear defending MLS Cup champion. And by the way, you're defending MLS Cup champion the whole dang year until somebody wins it again. That's how
it's funny. I have a text thread with a rival fan base. I mentioned that, reference it quite often. And, the gentleman's agreement is, when they won it, the name of the thread got to be, champions for the other guys. And now it's 6-time LA Galaxy champions is the name of the thread.
Right.
And it gets to be the name of the thread until someone else wins it next season, or if the Galaxy do it again. Interesting that Vanney and Cerrillo were the ones that were there representing the Galaxy, thinking about with Ricky Puig with his injury not being available. That makes sense. Gabriel Peck and Joseph Paintsel, maybe they could have been, but then when you think about speaking to the media, maybe
they're like, I'm out. They don't need to be there, right?
It's not necessarily one of those things after we just bashed Messi
Right.
for not being there. Why wasn't the newcomer of the year there?
But the difference is, the LA Galaxy won an MLS Cup championship.
There you go.
And Messi got eliminated in the playoffs. If I'm not
By Atlanta. By Atlanta United.
I believe I remember that. Yes, 100%.
Fun times.
Yes.
But to adding another trophy, I had this in my notes, and I wanted to bring it up. We talk about putting another one, getting to the 7th, and Edwin Cerrillo, seeing that with a glint in his eye. And I was just thinking, I'm not as stressed about adding more silverware. Obviously, you want to see the Galaxy do well, but with a Puig-less Galaxy and understanding that changes happen when we had our MLS Cup preview, my rah-rah speech in the locker room was, part of that was, you are not going to be with this group of players again. We know that even with, successful seasons or even poor seasons, the team is never exactly the same roster year to year. There's always changes no matter what. So that there's going to be change from year to year. But we also, in my mind, I feel like you get a grace period after winning a championship where you're okay with not winning a championship for a couple of years. Obviously, after 10 seasons, that was a threshold that people were not happy with. And of course, you want to be back to relevancy and you don't want to go to the depths that they went in 2017. You want to be in the conversation. But is there a grace period for winning a championship? And how long is that before you start to get hungry again? To me, that number is, 5 years. I think there's a 5-year grace period where if you don't win it, it's okay. You can still look back on it, and maybe it changes depending on other circumstances and other teams that pick up wins. But to me, I feel like you're good. If you go another 5 seasons without winning one, then the wheels can start turning. You can start raising concern. Maybe it's less for some people, but I don't know. I'm not as, and maybe it's just we're too close to it. We're still riding high, or I'm still riding high on the championship. But I feel like as long as they're in the conversation, they're not getting embarrassed. They're like a Seattle or a Columbus, who in recent years, they're just always in the mix. Right. As long as the Galaxy are there, I'm okay with us, as long as we're in the conversation.
Is it me? I'll say it. I'll say the quiet part out loud. I'll say the quiet part out loud. That was probably the easiest MLS Cup win the LA Galaxy have ever had. I don't know why that comes from that. I don't understand the playoff scenarios themselves are actually like pretty fraught with disaster every place you sort of look. We have one bad game, you're done. The only chance you get one chance to lose the game in that best of 3, which is stupid, but hey, it was there. And the LA Galaxy outscored Colorado 9-1. None of those games were difficult.
Wasn't an issue.
No, that wasn't an issue. What else wasn't an issue? The Minnesota game, not an issue, right? That was okay. It was a whole deal. Seattle was the game that everybody was like.
That was the one game.
This is the MLS Cup. This is we were looking at everything and how it came. It could have been something if Miami had been there. It could have been something if Cincinnati was there. It could have been something if Columbus was there. But all of them got scared and ran away whenever they saw the Galaxy coming. That's my honest assessment of everything. I don't understand it. I am still looking back at 2024 and trying to put that whole season into perspective and understand how the LA Galaxy came out. I'll tell you right now, it was very clear the last 10 games on, the LA Galaxy are best team in Major League Soccer. Yeah. And I don't even...
peaking at the right time.
They were peaking at the right time.
What I've been saying for so long, they did it. They actually went out and did it and peaked at the right time.
We peaked at the right time. You need a t-shirt that says we peaked at the right time. But no, I am just... it's still sort of one of those things. I look back and I look at the end of the season, and now how does that translate into this offseason? I mean, the Galaxy are 2 weeks plus, I think, 2 weeks away from starting up in terms of preseason camp. That's it. Where's the roster? I'm not even trying to, I don't want to be urgent. I don't want to be one of these people where it's just sort of like, okay, sure, whatever. Like, you guys going to go out. Here's the thing I would say about you being disconnected or you're sort of saying that maybe where's the fire? The fire is in trying to do it again. And if you're a sports team, trying to do it again is just an odd sense, right? Let's just talk odds. Odds-wise, like ridiculous odds to repeat. And then if you're able to repeat, trying to do something for a 3 times. There's always something, right? There's always something you can do.
You stack probability and progressive slots. Think of it. It just gets harder and harder each time.
It gets harder. But what are you looking at for this LA Galaxy team that you're like, oh yeah, I mean, it's crazy to say. They're clearly a playoff team, right? Like you're going to say, okay, they're going to be a playoff team again. Now, are they going to be an MLS Cup Supporter Shield Are they going to be supporter shield team? Are they going to be 1, 2, 3 in the Western Conference? I mean, the whole deal. Greg was talking about how the Miami game really got them started because it was something to work for and something to play for, right? And it really got them sort of hyped up. You go back and you talk to Will Coons, you talk to some of the players, they were like, we played that Miami game, we knew we were good. Like, we knew when we played that game that we were going to be good. And it's sort of like, man, you guys had some balls on you to be like, oh, well, we played that one game and we're going to be good. But I mean, I like how they went through it. Yeah.
But we saw it too, and the clip that's been making the rounds since the Galaxy won MLS Cup is Sasha Kljestan famously or infamously after that first game saying, are we really asking if the Galaxy are back because they tied at home against Inter Miami? And we watched that game and said, yes, this team looks like they have the goods. And so that's the funny thing is we saw it, they felt it, and you just knew, okay, there's something different about that team. And so we won't know that until we see the product on the field. And we know with the departure, I haven't had the opportunity to speak about, Brugman going. But it's interesting enough that Cerrillo is there at Media Day. I think Cerrillo in that Miami game and then over the course of the season, with no disrespect to Gaston Brugman, made us all go, Gaston Brugman who? And so it was that Edwin Cerrillo stepping up and taking that spot to where it hurts, and it hurts the team chemistry, but I think that the Galaxy will be okay without him. Now, going back to what his contributions were, Gaston Brugman, when that's your depth piece and that's who you're bringing in,
I know.
When there's a yellow card accumulation or when there's an injury, that's a luxury. And to be able to do that, and we saw the benefit that he had in MLS Cup. But over the course of the season, you saw that they were able to do it without them, and then maybe that's why he was one of those movable pieces when it came to it. And then the same thing with Jalen Neal. Haven't had the opportunity to talk about that, but also that was a heartbreaking one because we know what he means to the community and the Lakewood connection and all that. So of course it's tough to see, but we also saw over the course of the season when Garces came in, Jalen Neal became a luxury. Yes, off the bench, and when he's your third center back coming off the bench, that you're in a really good spot if he's there because he's shown that he's a starting caliber center back. But when you think about what you can possibly get for an MLS starting level center back, then that's where the business starts to come into it. And as much as it hurts, I understand where it's coming from. So the moves to me have been right in line and given me that same, okay, they showed their hand last season that the people that they brought in and the moves of who they got rid of, they knew what they were doing. So I'm trusting the process that, these moves are going to work out, because logically, when I think back at this and you take the emotion out of it, it seems like it makes a lot of sense with the business that they made.
Mr. Provino, by the way, says taking Cerrillo to Media Day in Miami, is that like the equivalent of planting a flag on the other team's turf? Like, Cerrillo goes in there and tries to body Messi, right? That's why Messi didn't show up. He was afraid of Edwin Cerrillo. He was like, I heard Cerrillo's going to be there. I don't want any piece of that kid.
What a menace. Goes to your city, for Media Day.
So much dog in that kid. Love him. He's always there. He's ready to go. And he's got like the biggest smile on his face the whole time. He could punch
almost too big, right?
He could punch you in the face and smile at you, and you'd be like, all right, it's okay. It's like one of those, okay, I see what you did there. It's all
and with his goal of the season candidate or nominee, or if we're just dubbing it goal of the season against LAFC, my favorite part obviously is a banger, but one of my favorite parts of that is the celebration, and he just has that smile like, I got him. I got you. And it's you can't not like the guy.
No, 100%. You like him and you want him on your team, right? He's one of those guys.
100%.
So you get that. Adam, by the way, $2 super chat says, any thoughts for you, Eric, on Ted Unkel retiring? Are you adios, Mr. Ted Unkel? Have a nice time. Are you sending him a Christmas card?
I'll like an Instagram post or his post on X for saying his goodbye. That's where I'll draw my line. I'll say this. Being a referee, we criticize referees all the time. It's a thankless job, but there is something to be said about consistency over the course, to not have embarrassing moments. I'm sure people are going to point to games where Ted Unkel has, screwed over the Galaxy and screwed over teams here and there. But I think show me, your spreadsheets that you fill out day to day at your work, and show me where you didn't make a mistake here or there. Right. But I think Ted Unkel, over the course of his refereeing career, was consistent. You knew what you were getting with it. You may not like it, but
Right.
you knew you were going to get a professional referee who, some games, of course, were going to be better than others, but at the same time, you could say that about players. You could say that about coaches. You were talking with Kevin about Greg Vanney having some, he's on the hot seat, and then now, everything seemed to have worked out in his favor. So you can say that, defending MLS Cup championship coach Greg Vanney coming off that high, but there was a time where there were some moments where you couldn't think of. So same with Ted Unkel. I'm sure there were moments where he's not everyone's favorite, but I think to do a referee's job consistently over time and to be one of the main staples in big games, you have to tip your cap. So respect to Ted Unkel and wishing him well. I did see his retirement post where, he's saying he's going to spend time with his family, has kids, that he's going to hang out with.
My wife is the better referee, so I don't stand a chance in here anyway.
She's got that Apple TV money flowing in. I don't need to work. I like that. Ted Unkel, the trophy husband.
He did
make it work.
He did. By the way, Feel the Berm. If he wanted a title for his retirement was he called Uncle. There you go. So
well done. Hey, these are
yes.
the jokes, folks.
These we enjoy it. MLS coming out with the fact that they have a documentary coming out. Onside, Major League Soccer premieres February 21st on Apple TV Plus. They do not pay me to say that, but we're all interested in doing it. The LA Galaxy's post on that was pretty fun, which was, I wonder how it turns out. Right? Like, ooh, like the whole deal.
Can't wait for the season finale of that one.
Right.
I will mention how do we feel about the name Onside?
It's
fair, foul.
I was
lukewarm.
It's for somebody who has come up with many names that are soccer related or headlines that are soccer related. It's right down the middle. It's not too far off to one side. It's like onside. It's like, okay, cool. This is the only problem I have with it is if you're trying to get neutrals and you're going to talk about the offside rule, like that's where you're already like, wait, are we onside or offside? It's like maybe offside. Maybe
offside would have been
You like that one better?
There.
Yeah.
I think offside creates the controversy. It raises the flag. There's an action to it. Onside, there's no action to you were onside. It's just you keep playing. And I keep thinking of, because it's from the creators of F1 Drive to Survive. Right. Drive to Survive, that has stakes. There's meaning to that. Onside,
yeah.
I don't know that it does much for me. So again,
who
am I?
Major League Soccer, offside. Right, you're right. It's not drive to. Let's see. What can we shoot to scoot? I don't know. It's one of those.
Go for the goal. Yeah, I'm sure that's a thing. Some Major League Soccer or Major League
VAR, very awesome soccering something, but there's an R in there. I don't know. I'm thinking off the top of it. Yeah, this is why you don't workshop live.
I was going to say this is not the forum. No. This is where you start to say, maybe onside's not so bad. But my last gripe that I will say, premiering February 21st and MLS games resume on the weekend of the 22nd and the 23rd. My gripe with that is I think you'd benefit to maybe have this show premiere a week, 2 weeks in advance. That way you can build a fervor and build up to it and have these storylines develop. So then you really do catch the casual viewer if they're watching a show or two for a couple weeks, or maybe you binge it over the course 5-6 episodes. And then you say, okay, now I want to watch the actual games. When it debuts the same weekend as the games, it makes it a little bit trickier to convert a casual if that's what their goal was.
Hey, chat, hit me with your most offside MLS documentary.
Go for it. I love
titles, it. Right? Let's see. All for Jam, right? You could jam
all for the cup.
How about jamming for the cup? How about jamming jamming for the cup? What else? At least it isn't on sides. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. We should be thankful. It's not offsides. It's offside. You're either offside
rule
or onside. You are not onsides. You are not offsides. You are offside or onside. One of those resign versus resign things that drives me crazy. I don't have very many of them, but that's one of them that certainly
I saw one with it was wrestling related. They're saying about Becky Lynch resigns. I was like, I think they mean resigns. Yeah, I think that's what they were trying to say. They should have named it There Will Be Goals.
There will be goals. How about?
So again, shout out to Gary with that one.
How about no defense? right? No defense, right? Isn't that what they say about Major League
the
Soccer?
defense rests.
Defense rests on its.
There's something here. You can get cute with it.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Wags, I like it. It could have been the real Wags of Major League Soccer.
That's a spinoff. That is with the scope right here on my forehead.
Okay,
that's what
you're
I'm
here
looking
for that.
Okay. That's the show that I think you're going to be able to figure out. The Wags show, MLS Wags show.
Aaron has one. I'll say it correctly, as Greg Vanney would say it. A growing injury for the MLS Cup, otherwise known as a groin injury for MLS Cup. I know, always good. So that's what we have there. But yeah, so that's coming out. The main focus, or something that I at least wanted to point to, is obviously we have these rumors that are out there and how we go. We can bring up the roster. We can show you that there's 23 players on it. I think that I'm correct on all that. I went through it and I didn't have a chance to fill it all out, but I got most of the stuff in there. But you got Paintsel, Peck, Puig, Royce, Fagundes, Delgado, Jovalic, Yamane, Cerrillo, Aude, Nelson McCarthy, Garces, Barry, Mitrovic. Then you have Cuevas, Lepli, Bibu. Harbor Miller is now on the roster, right? Isaiah Parente is on the roster. Gino Vivi is on the roster. Ruben Ramos Jr. is on the roster. And Sean Davis. So as of right now, and listen, they won't all be on the senior roster and they won't all be salary capped, and some are going to go different places, but that's who's on the roster as of right now.
Yeah, it felt... Again, I try my best not to be disrespectful on this show, but some of those names towards the end, they just feel like fodder to be loaned down to MLS Next Pro. As the quote unquote real names start filing in, then we'll figure out what this roster really is. You're going to see those players at Coachella. You're going to see those players fill in spots like you did this season, with Parente and Lepli, and they're going to have their moments, but that's not what you're not gonna back up your defending title run with those names on the back end of the roster.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. I can understand why they're filling in that particular case. The big deal is, where does the LA Galaxy need the biggest roster space? And I sort of say, this roster building is not for the faint of heart. You are going to, there's still some big decisions that have to be made. One is bringing back Maya Yoshida. You bring him back. Are you going to be able to go in here, and are you going to keep Dejan Jovalic or not? We don't know whether or not the Galaxy will be able to keep Dejan Jovalic. If you don't keep him, then you have to go out and find replacements. And that's sort of the whole thing. Is there are guys on here who we think are sort of, coming back. We can look at Maya Yoshida and say, I think he's coming back. So you could probably count him as the 24th player on the roster. That being said, the guys who are on the roster, the core is still pretty much there, right? You still have your guys, but you're going to be without Ricky Puig. Greg Vanney talked about going to visit Ricky Puig in Barcelona, and he said that he's doing well and that he's, taking steps, but it's going to be a long road. I still think we're looking at August. Nobody said that out loud, and I don't think anybody will for a little while. But I think August is whenever you expect that. So Ricky Puig is there. You have Sanabria, who's coming in and is going to be sort of the Gaston Brugman replacement. You have some of the other ones that we've sort of looked at that can come in, but there are holes in this roster, and they get bigger whenever you move somebody like Dejan Jovalic. And I misspoke on Monday's show, which I try not to, but I got sucked into a line of thinking where I was like, oh yeah, I know what I'm talking about.
Also, we were renaming the MLS show. When you do it live, it's not necessarily the easiest thing. You get a little brain fog when you get in there. So I'll give you the grace on that.
But the LA Galaxy are under the 3 designated players, 3 U22s, not 2 U22s. So as of right now, the LA Galaxy only have 1 U22 that is signed to the roster. That's Julian Aude. Aude will still be a U22 this year. They have Sanabria, who is going to be a U22 signing if that eventually gets across the line, which I expect it to. So that's going to be your second. There is a open U22 spot open, and that means that it could be for maybe Baji, who's a younger player who they're sort of looking at. But it also could be that you're going to move somebody like Dejan Jovalic, and then you're going to have to replace him with another U22 striker, which is what Dejan Jovalic was before. And so that stuff still has to happen. That's wherever I think it gets crazy here. The LA Galaxy don't have to play in that first round of the CONCACAF Champions Cup, right? They get to play.
That's the benefit as well. And where I was worried about the roster construction and with Puig being out is a lot of those games, they kick off before the official season. And so coming back earlier. And so they really did benefit from not being in that first round.
Yeah, and I think it'll allow them to establish rosters and the whole deal. Now, that being said, the second month of the season for them, they're going to have 7 games, right? So
it's going to get congested. Yeah.
Congested, and there is a focus by the LA Galaxy to try and be to try to go out and win this CONCACAF Champions Cup. I mean, there's something real there. So Greg Vanney talked about depth, and they said, we were really happy with our depth this year. Now it's trying about recreating that for this upcoming season. So you're going to watch that, but I still have question marks, and the defense is one of them, certainly, just in terms of the bodies that you're going to put there. If it's going to be Garces and somebody else, then you need to get somebody else in. I have a feeling it's going to be Garces and Yoshida, at least to start the season. And then they still have to go in and find a replacement, really, for Jalen Neal, which they haven't done. They found a replacement, I think, for Caceres, if you want to look at Tom Bogert's reporting on everything, including Matthias Zonka Jorgensen, right? That's who's likely to come in and replace Caceres, but who's going to replace Jalen Neal in that position? So those are the question marks that you sort of have to go up and raise the flags. There's also, as we look at this, the striker question mark is still very much there, right? And it's sort of like, okay, who's going to, where's the starting lineup right now? I think you can look at Aude or Nelson on the left. I think you can look at Yoshida and Garces in the center. I think you look at John McCarthy or Mitrovic, and I don't know how that shakes out this year, but I imagine that's going to be even more controversial than it was last year. Excuse me. But so you have that. You have Yamani on the right. So you sort of have a semblance of what you think the starting lineup is, and I'm sure Greg Vanney and Will Kuntz have that. Now, what does it look like in the midfield? Okay, so who's going to replace Ricky Puig? I don't think it's going to be Royce all the time, so I think it's going to be a Diego Fagundes is going to probably take up the most of those minutes. You're going to have Delgado, you're going to have Cerrillo, and you sort of have an idea of what that looks like. You have Peck, you have Paintsel. But then you get to Joveljic, and if you move Joveljic, how do you replace him, and who's going to be that replacement, and how does that work? There's still some stuff that I have question marks about.
Yeah, going to the midfield, I do think it is Royce until further notice, because we know the injury history that goes along with it. I think you start with Royce as your number 1A option, and then as you need to with schedule congestion and things like that, then Fagundes slots in, and Fagundes does become your Swiss Army knife with, Peck and Paintsel on the outside on the wings. Then you can slide Fagundes out there. To me, I'm looking at those wing positions also with the length of the season, and we're very fortunate, and I'm going to knock on wood here, to not have, lengthy injuries, but you're relying on Peck and Paintsel to stay healthy for a long season with CONCACAF Champions Cup and everything else that comes along with it. To me, I would love to have another backup winger that's interchangeable on that. I think that's an area that they should probably be looking for. And maybe it's too much to ask for, we're looking for a unicorn here, but someone who may be interchangeable with that forward spot as well. That is what we were sold on with Diego Fagundes. I don't think we saw a lot of minutes with him at striker, but it's a possibility. It's an option with the permutations, however you want to figure it out. You're right about Joveljic. I think you do need to figure out what the answer is going to be and who's going to play up there, because with him gone, it starts to get really thin. And so you do think, do you go after, a Miguel Berry Jr., where another guy in that vein, Kai Kamara type guy who's been around the league, more of an MLS veteran who's going to be serviceable, because you're not going to be able to go and splash the cash for a DP striker, or for, maybe it is the U22. You just do a like for like what you did for Joveljic. You go and get, find someone else who fits that profile. So those, you're a defender. You're going to think from the defensive mindset. And to me, I'm thinking, where are the goals going to come from? Where are you backing up those wings if something does go sideways with Peck or Paintsel? And
how different are the Galaxy going to play without Ricky Puig through an extended period of time versus whenever he eventually comes back and all that fun stuff? So I think that is a good one. Tim, by the way, asked $2. Hi guys, who's going to start game 1 at goalie? John McCarthy. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you pull John McCarthy away from the guy just won an MLS Cup, was rock solid through all the time. He's a big-time goalkeeper. That is a big-time goalkeeper, boys and girls. We didn't think it. We thought perhaps there was going to be, when the chips were on the table, he earned it. And I don't know if you're Mitrovic, I don't know what you do about that. That's like one of those that you just keep showing up and you keep getting ready. And if there's an injury, you play. And if you get an opportunity to play, you play. It's one of those.
Yeah, I was thinking about this. You're not going to catch me saying anything bad about John McCarthy on this show. And I think back to when he first signed, we went to the coaches convention in Anaheim, and I remember, some gentleman pulling me aside and saying, "Oh, you guys got J-Mac," and at the time I didn't realize that was his nickname. But it reminded me of one of my favorite quotes, and I think I've referenced it on this show's from 10 Things I Hate About You, when he says, "What's the deal with this girl? Does she have beer-flavored nipples?" And it's this
Great
the
line,
way
yes.
they spoke about J-Mac, and hearing some friends who worked with LAFC and saying the way they spoke about him, I'm like, what's the deal with this guy? He was a backup keeper, and he's just this beloved figure. And then he comes to the team, and you say, oh, okay, now I get it. And so I think about his journey where he basically stepped in, was part of an MLS Cup winning team, filled in for a good majority of the season, and to no fault of his own was replaced when it counted. And then they, went on to lose. And then what does he do? He crosses town, comes here. We discussed maybe he's not the starter. Maybe you're switching with Leagues Cup, and maybe you're bringing in midweek and alternating at the beginning of the season. And then just over the course of the season, just was completely solid and did nothing wrong for you to say this guy should not be the starting keeper. So I think he's earned it over the course of 2 seasons. And when you look back on his career, multi MLS Cup winning champion, solid, unless he just finds a terrible run of form a la Jonathan Pond, like you guys were speaking,
right,
then maybe we can start having a conversation. But, something has to go wrong for Mitrovic to get that starting spot. And I'm with you. Mitrovic, I don't know that he can be upset about it. It is what it is. When we've seen Mitrovic play, he's done well in moments, but I don't know that he's done well enough to say, why are we not starting this guy? I don't think Mitrovic has shown that. And so
maybe he will.
From that regard, maybe he will. Maybe
right.
In preseason we see something different. But I think McCarthy is in that spot, and he can expect to be there. Maybe the rotation changes with the amount of games that they have. That will be something different that Vanney will figure out. But to me, McCarthy is your starter.
We'll have to get him on the John McCarthy on the show to ask him if he does have beer flavored nipples. You never know.
You never know. Maybe you're right. Who am I? I'm not gonna figure that out.
No, that's not something for us to figure out. So anyway, so that's where you sort of look. I look at the depth. I look at sort of the things that are happening there. I don't know that there's any like major sort of epiphanies that you can come from the roster and where it's at right now. It's just under construction and
just work to be done.
Yeah, and quite honestly, I have to tip my hat to Will Kuntz and Gordon Kleshin and all the guys who are in there working hard and trying to put this team together and doing all the things. Greg Vanney mentioned today, by the way, he goes, we've really moved away from sort of that agent based scouting, and he's like, now it's more about profile based scouting and who these guys are and where we have. Will and those guys usually put together 4 or 5 different options that they have. And that's sort of the ability for the LA Galaxy to go out and get what they want now. And so I think that they've earned the benefit of the doubt. They earned so much of the benefit of the doubt. I don't know that anybody should be like being like, is it time to, when it's time to play the games, the LA Galaxy will be ready. That's what they have led me to believe, which is crazy to think from last year to this year.
Which it's the John McCarthy argument. It's the same thing. We may have had questions last season, but we don't have questions anymore.
I have no questions.
With Will Kuntz he can sign you and me tomorrow, and everyone's gonna have to say he must know something.
Yeah.
Because there must be some secret or some loophole to the podcast cap money where you get extra funds. You just have to go with it and trust what he's doing, because he hasn't shown you that he doesn't know what he's doing.
Eric Gary $5 super chat says, Alien or Predator, who do you got? Those movies are too scary for me to watch. I do not like scary movies. I do not watch those movies. I'm gonna be straight up. I am so you don't understand. You mention scary movies to me and my heart starts to flutter a little bit. My wife, thank God I married somebody who's also like, why would we watch scary movies? That sounds horrible. Can you watch scary movies, Eric? Do you and your wife cuddle on the couch and watch scary movies?
It's more recently, oddly enough, after Stranger. We were not a scary movie.
Okay.
I was not a scary movie person growing up.
What a bunch of wimps.
Not a horror fan in general. But more recently, my kids and I got into Stranger Things. And so that kind of had us start to dip our toes into more serious horror movies and some things that were maybe borderline inappropriate as a dad, but
right.
I saw some inappropriate things as a kid too. So
right.
I went along with it, and I had conversations with them. And so we're enjoying horror movies, and the stuff that maybe gets a little too intense, I watch on my own. My wife's not a fan. So I'm not a old school horror fan, but I am newly into dabbling my toes in the horror world, and I do enjoy a good horror flick. That being said, I am going to select Alien because you're not going to catch me on record saying I go with the Predator. Yeah, no. I'm Team Alien all day long.
From what I have, from the clips I have seen, the Alien scares the crap out of me. So I'm going to say Alien, 100%. By the way, Eric, shout out in the chat room. Eric says, I once went on a date to watch a scary movie and covered my eyes the whole time. Never called her back because I was embarrassed. You know what, Eric? You didn't need to call her back. All right. You know what? She probably didn't want to go on another date with you either. And that's okay. So there's some people who are like, take me to a scary movie and it's fun. And there's some people who are like, why are you doing this to me? Right. And that's just, you're just, along this. My wife literally can't watch movies that don't end happily. Like she can't watch like movies that are like intense and that don't have. I, on the other hand, do enjoy a good, this movie didn't end the way that it was like, no, not everything happy happened at the end. I'm okay with that. I'm fine.
And you see that a lot in the horror genre, and you go, it's funny you mention it about the going on a date with a scary movie. I remember, again, we're in the off season. We've got time to kill.
Right. Go ahead.
One of the first, because the story is, take someone to go see a scary movie.
Right.
They get scared. You end up cuddling a little closer. Things happen. So the first movie I remember taking a date to a young hammer was to go watch The Faculty. Do you remember The Faculty?
No.
Josh Hartnett, and it got a little scary, and so we ended up not watching the movie so much and working on some other stuff.
So it did work for you.
It works. It works. Shout out to The Faculty.
I would like to point out the first scary movie I went to was Jurassic Park. Now, did I take a date to that movie? No. I took two of my buddies who we all sped read the book like 3 days before because we knew we were going to the movie. And then we walked to the movie theater because we were not old enough to drive at the time. It was PG-13. It was the first PG-13 movie I went to by myself. And I was like,
bold move.
I think I was 14 or 15 or something. I'm like, are they going to like card us or like, how's that work? I don't even know. Like people
what a
don't
simpler
know.
time.
Right? I'll tell you. So anyway, we walked to Triangle Square. If you're around the OC and Costa Mesa area, you remember Triangle Square. Walked to Triangle Square, went to go see Jurassic Park, thought it was the coolest movie I've ever seen. That to me is still like on the edge of like thriller more than like scary, right? It's a different level. My oldest, we just watched Twister, the new Twister movie.
Okay.
And I was like, have you ever watched like a thriller type movie? And she was like, no. And I'm like, I think this is the one for us. Like this, I can get along. So we watched it, and the whole time she's like grabbing the pillow, being like, I don't know what's gonna happen, that type of thing. And afterwards, she was like, that was fun. I'm like, yeah, those kinds of movies can be fun.
That's the best part.
100%. Yep. Always good. Let's see. I was just looking through some other things. Yeah, we are certainly looking some of that. Just the off season and how it goes. I don't have anything else for you. I mean, there's no more rumors.
No news. With Sanabria, you've mentioned it. That seems to be the closest that's down the pipe. And won't cross other bridges.
Zonka's coming. I mean, that seems like that one's also that one's also on the way to being completed. I don't know when any of those will happen, but really, I mean, the whole focus this week and everything else is going to be on the fires and everything that's going on. So not so much on sports, but what it is. Before we go, I do want to say there was, as I mentioned, a listener of ours, Steve, who was up in Altadena. Now, unfortunately, his house is gone. And not only that, but he gets to have this picture, which is Anderson Cooper of CNN standing right in front of where his house was. If you look behind Anderson Cooper, that is where Steve's house was. I don't know. I can't even fathom what that's like or how you look at that and how you can possibly even go. Steve told me that he was able to basically grab his G's hat. I think he said he grabbed a T-shirt that he got from the playoffs that earlier in 2024. He had like a hoodie and some other stuff in the car. That was it. They were gone. Literally had to get out of the house that fast. So his sister-in-law put together a GoFundMe. And so I will link to that in the descriptions of these videos. So that way you can find it. But whatever you can do for Steve and his wife. By the way, on the morning of her birthday is when all of this happened as well. So they were woken up early. Steve sent me a message, and that message came in at like 3 o'clock in the morning. So I know it's been tough for him. I can't imagine. I can't fathom everything that's going on. So if you get a chance, a couple dollars here, a couple dollars there. I'm not asking you to go ahead and drop $100,000 on anything. That's not anything. $5 here, $20 here. It all adds up and it all goes to somebody. And this is a member of the Galaxy family, so we always try to take care of.
thoughts are with Steve and Christina again. Going back to what I said at the beginning, and you think it's just stuff, but they're not making playoff shirts again, and they're not making another run of those. So those are the things that you cherish and you hold on to. And I'll mirror what you're saying on giving what you can. If you're fortunate to wake up in your house and to still have that, this is kind of a reminder to that and be thankful. So if you do have the means to head to that GoFundMe and contribute if you can, because every little bit, it's a cheesy thing to say, but every little bit, especially with the Galaxy family, when we've had tragedies and situations, they're really great at giving and sticking out and looking out for one another. So, if you can, make a donation in that direction. So thinking of you, Steve.
100% Steve behind you, and anything we can do, let us know. I know Jalen Neal's mom also had somebody that she was collecting some supplies for and stuff like that. And as much as Jalen is no longer with us, I think Sarah is going to be with us for quite some. I don't think you can get rid of the originally Galaxy mom, right?
Galaxy mom is in the handle. She can't go anywhere. She is not. She better not change to Impact Mom. Yeah, no. I'm not okay with it.
No, nobody is. We need to sign a petition or something. But no, that's sort of the thing. So again, as we sort of close it out, be kind to each other, help each other out, anything you can. Be safe. Listen to those evacuation orders. I'm hopeful that the weather turns in a favorable position, that the humidity increases, that the winds start blowing the fires back against itself and basically start to put that out, and that containment can be found. And for all of our first responders that are out there, fighting fires on no rest, and the police officers are out there who are trying to keep the streets safe, and there was reports of looting and everything else. I mean, just absolutely the most horrendous things you could possibly think of at this point. Having said all that, hopefully those first responders stay safe and are able to help other people. So be kind to each other. That's it. That always seems to help. And I think it'll get us through this. As you said, Eric, and I think it's right, we'll figure it out. We will figure it out. We'll figure it out. We'll get there. But the landscape's going to look a little different for a little while, and we'll have to change that, and things will come back. So anything else that you wanted to touch on before we get out of here?
No, I think you nailed it. You said everything that needed to be said. You never know who's impacted and to what degree they're impacted. So if you can go a little extra mile for someone else and show that kindness as best you can, or do something a little bit extra to help someone else in need. If you're in a fortunate situation, count your blessings, hug your kids, hug your family members, because you never know when things can go sideways.
Absolutely. All right, Eric, tell people where they can find you. Let's get on out of here.
All right. As always, you can find me on everything at HammerEV9. So at HammerEV and the number 9, Twitter, X, Instagram, Blue Sky, all the fun things.
All right. If you're looking for me on Twitter, X, at Galaxy Podcast, Corner of the Galaxy, cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can go on Spotify, you can go on SoundCloud, you can go on all those fun places. You type in Corner of the Galaxy, and that's where you can find us. All right. Crazy times here in Los Angeles. Be safe, be kind. Stay out of those evacuation zones, and we will be back on a Monday night. All right, for Mr. Eric, the Portuguese Hammer here, freezing in Texas, I'm Josh Pato Guessman, burning up here in Los Angeles. Everybody have a great, safe, wonderful weekend, and we will see you on Monday. Thanks for listening to our little Corner of the Galaxy.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening, and we ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye.